Welcome to True Echo, where every story echoes the truth that power doesn't always wear a suit, and dignity doesn't need a spotlight. Today's story will challenge your assumptions, stir your emotions, and leave you questioning how silence can sometimes be the loudest voice in the room. Stay with us until the end, because one moment on a crowded city bus changes everything. The city hadn't even fully woken up, but the streets buzzed with early morning tension, horns honking, tires screeching, sirens wailing in the distance like ghosts of last night's chaos. And inside bus 27, crammed with tired commuters, not a single soul smiled. Marcus Green sat near the window, trying to shrink himself, shoulders hunched, gaze low, his navy blue suit ironed but faded at the seams. He wasn't invisible, but he tried to be. His briefcase, aged leather worn smooth from years of gripping it like a lifeline, rested on his lap. Today, it held copies of his resume, his last good tie, and a sliver of hope. It was a job interview that could change everything. A chance to finally afford proper care for his mother, whose lungs betrayed her more each winter. Marcus had spent years watching her fade while he scraped by doing temp work, odd jobs, and whatever he could get. But today felt different. Today had weight. Purpose. Until the doors hissed open at 5th and Grant. She stepped onto the bus like she owned the block. Blonde. Immaculately dressed. Heels clicking like threats on linoleum. She scanned the seats with thinly veiled disgust, until her eyes landed on Marcus. That's when the air changed. Unbelievable, she announced, loud enough for everyone. A black man sitting while a white woman has to stand. Where's the decency? The words didn't just echo, they infected. Eyes snapped to Marcus like magnets. He could feel the stares press against his back, burning hot with silent judgment. No one spoke. Not the driver. Not the man beside her. No one. Just Marcus, trapped, shamed, and speechless. But he stood. Dignity intact, barely. He offered the seat without protest. Not because she deserved it, but because he needed to survive this moment. Needed to get to that interview. The bus jolted forward. Marcus steadied himself. That's when it happened. A pop. A hiss. A flick of her wrist. The scalding splash of coffee struck his chest with theatrical cruelty. The bitter stench filled his nose. His shirt, crisp and white moments ago, was now stained and soaked. The woman's voice cut like a blade. Suits you, she sneered. Matches your color perfectly. Nobody gasped. Nobody protested. A teenage boy stared wide-eyed from 2 rows back. A man chuckled under his breath. The driver didn't flinch. The silence screamed what no one said aloud, you brought this on yourself. Marcus didn't move. Didn't speak. He felt the familiar taste of shame, sharp, metallic, relentless. But he remembered his father's words. Pride walks quiet. Dignity don't need to shout. He moved to the back of the bus, coffee dripping down his shirt, back straight. But he didn't notice the man watching from across the aisle. A deep brown face. Salt and pepper beard. Quiet eyes full of knowing. Nor did he know that justice had already boarded the bus with him. Marcus stepped off the bus and into the wind, the morning air biting against his wet shirt. He didn't flinch. The cold was nothing compared to the chill that had crept under his skin back on that bus. His heart pounded steadily, each beat a reminder to keep going. The building loomed ahead, Sterling and Cole, 25 stories of glass and power in the heart of the city. People in tailored suits brushed past him without a second glance, their faces smooth, confident. No one noticed the stain on his shirt. Or if they did, they didn't care. That was its own kind of mercy. Marcus walked through the revolving doors, trying not to notice his reflection in the glass. He looked like a man wronged, but also like a man still standing. And that had to count for something. The lobby was cathedral-like. White marble floors. Glass-paneled walls. Hanging lights like polished stars. A receptionist in a charcoal blazer sat behind a sleek desk, her expression unreadable. Her eyes flicked briefly to the coffee stain but didn't ask. "Name," she said flatly. "Marcus Green. I have an interview. Associate consultant." She tapped something into her computer and pointed to a row of minimalist chairs. "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Marcus nodded and sat down, careful not to let the wet fabric touch the white leather. He set his briefcase gently beside him. His fingers tightened around the handle. That briefcase had once held his father's field notes, now, it held everything he still hoped to be. The elevator chimed. Marcus glanced up. A woman in an ivory coat stepped out, her heels clicking across the marble just like on the bus. Her blonde hair was perfectly pinned. Her face calm. Polished. Cold. He froze for half a breath. It was her. The same woman who had humiliated him in front of everyone. She walked right past him without even a flicker of recognition. No smug smirk. No flinch. Nothing. Of course, she didn't remember him. To people like her, it wasn't an incident. It was just Tuesday. Just another black man to trample over. But Marcus didn't forget. Before he could dwell on it, a tall, broad-shouldered man approached from the far hallway. Dark brown skin. Salt and pepper beard. Sharp eyes that didn't miss much. Marcus recognized him instantly. The man from the bus. He was no stranger now. He was the man who had seen it all and said nothing, yet somehow, his silence had not been indifference. There had been a different kind of power in his gaze. One that now made sense. The man extended a hand. "Marcus Green." "Yes, sir." "Anthony Sterling," he said evenly. "CEO." The words hit like a thunderclap. Marcus's mind reeled. CEO. Before he could respond, Anthony turned and gestured down the hallway. "This way." They walked in silence through polished corridors, past glass offices and frosted conference rooms. Marcus's pulse quickened. The CEO himself was conducting the interview? That wasn't normal. Something was happening. Inside a wide room, several executives sat around a table. And at the far end, flipping through a portfolio with professional ease, sat Lauren Pierce, the woman from the bus. Marcus stiffened. She still didn't look up. Anthony gestured toward an empty seat. "Let's begin." The interview began like any other. Strategy questions. Case studies. Conflict resolution. Marcus answered each one with quiet poise, his voice low but firm. His mind raced, but he didn't stumble. He couldn't afford to. Lauren finally spoke. Her voice, cool and self-assured, filled the room as she detailed her experience in managing high-pressure teams. She sounded perfect. Flawless. Calculated. But Marcus noticed her voice waver just slightly when Anthony turned toward her. "Miss Pierce," he said, calm and measured, "Sterling and Co. believes in leadership rooted in integrity. Tell me, how do you ensure respect and equity in a diverse workplace?" Her eyes flicked to him, just for a second. A crack in the armor. I believe in treating all people fairly," she said, too quickly. "Regardless of background or, appearance." A pause. Thin ice. "Even when no one's watching?" Anthony asked. Silence. Her mouth opened slightly. She glanced around the room. Nobody jumped in to save her. The rest of her answers came faster, Messier. She smiled too often. Repeated herself. That cool edge was gone. When the interview ended, the executives rose and began to file out. But Anthony remained seated. He looked at Marcus. "You handled yourself with more grace than most would." Then he turned to Lauren. "Miss Pierce. Thank you for your time. Unfortunately, I don't believe you reflect the values we stand for here at Sterling and Cole. We won't be moving forward with your application." Lauren's face froze. Her lips parted. But nothing came out. Anthony rose from his chair. "Mr. Green," he said, "welcome to Sterling and Cole." Marcus blinked. His throat tightened. He could barely breathe. Anthony smiled faintly. "Come with me." As Marcus followed him from the room, he glanced back once. Lauren was still seated, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her ivory coat a blinding contrast against the dark glass around her. The roles had reversed. He hadn't said a word. He didn't need to. Lauren Pierce sat rigid in the back seat of the cab, her jaw clenched so tightly it felt like her teeth might crack. The cabbie barely acknowledged her, just nodded when she gave the address, then turned up the radio. The traffic crawled, horns honking, lights flashing red, but she didn't notice any of it. She was back in that conference room. Back in that moment when the CEO, that man, looked her in the eye and told her she didn't belong. That he saw through her. Lauren had never been rejected in her professional life, not like that. Not publicly. Not definitively. Especially not in favor of him. The image of Marcus's coffee-stained shirt burned in her brain. The same man she'd mocked, degraded, dehumanized on that bus was now in the seat she wanted. And the CEO had sided with him. Just like that. No warnings. No second chances. Just, "We won't be moving forward with your application." The humiliation bubbled under her skin. She needed to regain control. To flip the narrative. If they wanted to paint her as some kind of villain, she'd show them how quickly the world turns sympathetic for the right kind of woman, especially a victimized one. As soon as she got home, she peeled off her coat and collapsed onto her designer couch, rage simmering beneath her polished exterior. She grabbed her phone and opened her social media app, fingers flying across the keyboard. "This morning I was verbally harassed and intimidated by a man on public transportation. I feared for my safety. Hours later, I walk into an interview and see him in the same company's office. If this is who Sterling and Cole employs, they should be ashamed." She added a frowning face, a broken heart, and tagged the company. The post went live. Almost instantly, likes and comments began to appear. "Are you okay? Unacceptable. You should sue. Tag the CEO. Let's get answers." Lauren leaned back, satisfied. This was how you rewrote the story. This was how you won sympathy, how you controlled perception. She wasn't the racist anymore. She was the concerned professional woman who was unsafe near a threatening man. But it didn't last. Not even 30 minutes later, her phone began to vibrate uncontrollably. Ping. 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 She unlocked the screen. Thousands of mentions. Thousands of tags. At first, she smiled, thinking it was her post gaining traction. Until she saw it. A video. Grainy, vertical, phone recorded. Inside the bus. Marcus. Standing silently. His shirt clean. Then her, stepping forward, voice raised, sneering. "Suits you. Matches your color perfectly." The coffee splashed. His face didn't react. But hers did, smug, cold, triumphant. It was all there. Everything. The caption. "This happened on bus 27 this morning. I'm 17. I filmed it. I won't stay silent." Lauren's stomach dropped. She watched the video again, her face draining of color. Thousands of comments. And none in her favor now. Racist trash. This is why we don't believe your crocodile tears. Imagine lying after doing this. This guy didn't say a word and still had to deal with this. Her fake post was now being ripped apart and reposted with screenshots of the video. Someone had found her LinkedIn. Her employer. Her past tweets. Everything. She tried to delete her post. Too late. Tried to lock her account. Screenshots had already spread. She sent a message to the girl who posted the video. Please take this down. This was a misunderstanding. I'm sorry. No response. Just another repost, this time by a major activist account with over 2 million followers. Lauren's hands trembled. Her chest tightened. She wasn't in control anymore. And Marcus? He hadn't said a word. Marcus stood in his mother's kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in sudsy dishwater. The house was modest, 2 bedrooms, peeling linoleum, faded wallpaper, but it was warm. The smell of chicken broth simmering on the stove mixed with the faint scent of lavender from the plug-in near the window. His mother's laugh echoed from the living room, where an old sitcom rerun played quietly. She'd had a good day. And so had he. He had come straight from his first full day at Sterling & Cole, too wired to sit still, too humble to gloat. His new badge still felt strange around his neck. The desk wasn't big, but it was his. His name was already on a placard. He had access to the building, to the cafeteria, to the floor with the city view. And more importantly, to a future. He rinsed a plate and set it on the rack when his phone buzzed. He dried his hands and checked the screen. DM from @Truthonthobus. Hi. I'm the girl who filmed the video. Just wanted to say, thank you for how you handled everything. The world needed to see it. I'm sorry that happened to you. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. There had been thousands of comments since the video went viral. News outlets had reached out. Activists. A radio station. Even a morning talk show. He'd ignored them all. But this? This was different. He typed slowly, carefully. Thank you for having the courage to film it. Most people looked away. You didn't. Seconds later, the reply came. I didn't know what else to do. My mom says not to get involved. But I thought, what if nobody ever sees this? Marcus's fingers hovered above the screen. He thought of that bus. Of the silence. Of the people who turned away. And of her, the teenager with a shaky grip and a stronger sense of justice than most adults. You did the right thing. You changed the story. She sent one more message. Just promise me you won't let this stop you. We need people like you in those rooms. Marcus's throat tightened. That night, he couldn't sleep. He read article after article. His name was trending locally. The video had passed 3 million views. But what struck him most wasn't the fame. It was the stories in the comments. People sharing similar experiences. Moments of humiliation in public places. Racism that had gone unseen and unspoken for decades. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all of them. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, buried beneath the noise, he saw a new post trending. Breaking, Lauren Pierce removed from board consideration at 2 local nonprofits following viral bus incident. There it was. Quiet. Inevitable. She had tried to destroy him with lies. But the truth had found its way out. And while Lauren's name was being scrubbed off web pages, Marcus's name was now attached to something else. Resilience. Integrity. Strength. Lauren Pierce sat alone at her kitchen island, a half-finished glass of wine beside her and the glow of her laptop screen illuminating her pale face. Her ivory blouse was wrinkled, mascara smudged under her eyes. She hadn't left the apartment in 2 days. Every attempt to explain, defend, or redirect had failed. Every influencer she emailed ignored her. Every apology she drafted sounded hollow, even to herself. The post she once believed would be her redemption had become her condemnation. An online petition to bar her from public speaking events had over 40,000 signatures. Her alma mater removed her profile from the alumni board. Emails had started arriving from clients she once wooed, asking to sever ties. One company, a luxury wellness brand she used to represent, had issued a public statement that included a single, devastating line. "We stand firmly against racism in all its forms, including the casual cruelty caught on video involving Ms. Lauren Pierce." She slammed the laptop shut and buried her face in her hands. How had it come to this? Because you couldn't just sit down, she thought bitterly. Because you thought you were untouchable. And now, the very man she tried to humiliate was everything she wanted to be: respected, rising, unshaken. Meanwhile, she was radioactive. Lauren scrolled through her silent phone, past the dwindling texts from friends who didn't know what to say. She opened Marcus's profile. It was simple. Professional. No rants. No gloating. Just a pinned statement. Dignity is silent. The world will see what it chooses. I'll keep doing the work. Underneath were thousands of comments, praise, support, strangers writing how His grace changed their outlook on life. She closed the app, her fingers trembling. For the first time, she felt something sharp twist in her gut. Not guilt. Not remorse. Loss. Because Marcus Green had taken nothing from her, but the world had chosen him. And it would never choose her again. At Sterling & Cole, Marcus's second week passed with quiet intensity. His work ethic hadn't gone unnoticed. His reports were clear, his strategies sound. And he spoke only when it added value. But every room he entered held a certain hum now, a weight of recognition. People whispered after meetings. Colleagues who once nodded coldly now stopped him in the hall with questions, praise, even respect. Not just because of the bus video. But because they realized something Lauren never did. He belonged. One afternoon, Anthony Sterling invited him to the executive floor for a private meeting. The view from the corner office swept across the skyline, steel and glass stretching for miles. "I've been contacted by a few national outlets," Anthony said, leaning on his desk. "They want to run stories. Interviews. Thought pieces. The man who kept his dignity. That sort of thing." Marcus folded his hands. "You didn't bring me here for press." Anthony smiled faintly. "No, I brought you here because you earned this job. And because you didn't take the bait. You didn't stoop." He paused, then added, "But moments like this? They can be used. If you want to say something, the world is listening. Just know it won't always be kind." Marcus looked out the window, thinking of the bus, the teenager, his mother's frail hands as she held his offer letter. "I don't need applause," he said quietly. "But maybe people out there need to know that silence isn't the same as surrender." Anthony nodded. "You don't have to raise your voice," he said. "You already raised the bar." It was a quiet Friday afternoon when Marcus saw her again. He had just stepped out of a client debrief meeting, the kind of session where he'd once felt like an imposter. But now, coworkers listened when he spoke. They took notes. They nodded. He no longer felt like a visitor in someone else's world. He walked toward the break room, still mentally unpacking the strategy proposal, when a receptionist caught his eye. "Mr. Green," she said, hesitant. "There's someone here asking to speak with you." "No appointment." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She looked uncomfortable. "She says her name is Lauren Pierce." His body went still. He hadn't said her name aloud since the day of the interview. He hadn't even thought much about her. But the name still struck like a reflex. He nodded slowly. "Where is she?" "Downstairs. By the elevators." He took a breath and headed down. When the elevator doors slid open, there she was, dressed in black slacks and a plain blouse, hair pulled back, no heels, no coat. Stripped of everything that once made her look powerful. Her face was pale, tight. Her eyes flicked to his immediately. Marcus. He didn't respond. He simply stopped a few feet away, arms crossed loosely. She exhaled, shaky. I didn't come to argue. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but she swallowed. I wanted to look you in the eye. And say it. Say what? He thought, but stayed silent. She shifted awkwardly. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve a conversation. But the truth is. I thought I could spin it, bury it, like it didn't matter. But it did. It still does. Marcus watched her, unreadable. I lost everything, she added quietly. But I think what haunts me most isn't what I lost, it's that you didn't lose anything, and yet you still walked through all that with more grace than I've ever shown in my life. The words hung in the air, heavy. I'm sorry, she said finally. Not for what happened to me. For what I did to you. Marcus took a moment. His voice was low, steady. I don't need an apology, he said. But maybe someone else does. The next person like me. The kid who sees that video and learns something. What you do next, that matters more than what you say right now. Lauren nodded slowly, emotion flickering behind her eyes. Goodbye, Marcus. He didn't say goodbye. He simply turned, walked back toward the elevator, and stepped in without looking back. As the doors slid shut, he saw her standing there, still, quiet, smaller than he remembered. But it wasn't about her anymore. It never was. 3 weeks later, the buzz had finally quieted. The viral headlines had moved on, as they always do. The internet found new outrage, new distractions. But inside Sterling and Cole, something had shifted permanently, and not just for Marcus Green. He sat by the window in the building's 15th floor break room, a fresh cup of coffee in his hands, steam curling upward into the soft morning light. His navy blue suit was crisp, the same one he wore the day of the incident, only now freshly tailored, the hem restored, the old stain gone for good. Still, he remembered. Not just the pain, but the stillness. The restraint. The decision not to fight fire with fire, but to stand and let the truth burn brighter. Across the office, the young woman with curly brown hair, the one who'd first spoken to him after his hire, passed by with a soft smile. You seeing this? She asked, holding up her phone. Marcus leaned in. It was a news clip. A short interview with the teen girl who had filmed the infamous bus video. She stood outside her high school, shy but unwavering. I didn't film it for views. I filmed it because I didn't want to grow up thinking this kind of silence was normal. I wanted to show that dignity is louder than hate. Marcus exhaled slowly, humbled. The clip cut to a new initiative started by local community leaders, free bystander training workshops. Anti-discrimination pledges in public spaces. Schools screening the video in ethics and civics lessons. Something real had come of it. A ripple. A movement. All started by a moment. A look. A choice not to fight, but to stand. Back at his desk, Marcus found an envelope waiting. Inside, a letter. Handwritten. Mr. Green. My name is Elijah Morris. I'm 17. I used to think people like me, quiet, anxious, could never make a difference. But then I saw your story. You didn't yell. You didn't beg. You just stood there, soaked and silent, and still stood taller than anyone else. I want to be like that. Thank you. For showing me that power doesn't always shout. Marcus sat still, letting the words settle. That's what no viral post ever truly captured, the quiet echoes of moments like these. The lives it touched beyond the screen. Anthony Sterling passed by behind him, pausing with a subtle nod. "They're planning to rename the community mentorship program after you," he said, voice calm. "You okay with that?" Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "I didn't do anything," he replied. Anthony smiled. "You did enough." As the sun began to dip behind the towers of the city, Marcus exited the building and stepped into the cool dusk air. Traffic murmured down the avenue. The same streets he'd once walked burdened by fear now felt changed. Not because the world had suddenly fixed itself, but because, sometimes, all it took was one person refusing to break when everyone else expected them to. And sometimes, the loudest protest isn't noise. It's grace. It's silence, held with dignity. It's a young black man on a crowded bus who refused to bend, until the world had no choice but to see him. Marcus Green's story reminds us that the strength to hold your dignity, especially when no one else will defend it, isn't weakness, but power. In a world quick to shout, sometimes the most revolutionary act is standing still. As one quiet teen said, "I didn't want to grow up thinking silence was normal." So ask yourself, when the moment comes, will you speak? Or will you simply not look away? If this story moved you, like and share to echo its truth forward. Subscribe to True Echo for more powerful real-life inspired stories that remind us, even in darkness, one voice, or one silence, can change everything.